Good evening, everybody. This is Mike with On Point Preparedness. Today is March 31st, and I'm going to do basically a newscast for you all. I haven't touched base in a couple of days, and so I've got a whole conglomeration of news articles. I think we all are pretty much in the same boat where things are just moving incredibly fast, faster than we can even really keep up with things. And so I've got maybe about, 20 or so articles that I've tried to condense or to group into themes just to let you be aware of some of the things that I'm seeing on the scene. I've entitled this The Division, Truther versus Truther, because that's really the state that we're in. There's so much information, a proliferation of information, that now you have sort of Christians going at Christians or truthers against truthers. And honestly, I think this is a tactic of Antichrist. I think it is to cause division. It's to cause confusion. And it's to really put people in a spirit of just really not knowing what's going on. And I'll show you a whole bunch of articles which lead to that or give credence to that. Multiple different topics, whether it's some of the guidance they're giving on face masks or the guidance on the pandemic itself, or just it's all over the place. And really, I think it's all to cause division. So we're going to go and look through a couple of these articles and just show you this truther versus truther movement. But in addition to that, just look across the gamut of articles of what's going on today. So let me go ahead and I'm going to switch over here to the screen share. I posted this on my On Point Preparedness Facebook page. And many of you saw it, pretty drastic footage, but this is out of Wuhan. And you can see the title here, Violence Erupts in China as People Try to Leave the Hubei Province, which is where Wuhan is. Now, a little bit background on why this riot started and how I think this ties within the United States. Basically, Wuhan, as you all know, was the area that was hit hardest by the virus. And therefore it was put under lockdown, a pretty significant lockdown. And the provinces surrounding Hubei province, we saw some early footage coming out of China where people were questioning, are you from Wuhan? Are you from Wuhan? And taxi drivers were kicking passengers out of their taxis if they were from Wuhan. There was a fear of people from that area. Well, it's actually played out right now where the government has removed the quarantine from Wuhan, and they're allowing citizens to go into other provinces. Well, what happened here is that the police in the surrounding district wouldn't let people come in. They were going against government orders because they thought that these were infected people. They're going to infect their district. And so a riot broke out. They said, looks like, I think some reports said 10,000 people. It was on this particular bridge that was between the two provinces. And you actually had police on police going against one another. Hubei province police versus, I forget the other province. But just take a look at this video. And then I just want to look at the psychology of this and compare it to what I see happening within the United States currently. The situation, it's going to buffer a little bit here. The situation is still not good over there. A lot of people are facing famine. A lot of people want to return to work. And you can see the riot police from the other province. They're guarding the bridge. And so these people are just, they're upset and they want to get through. But then on the other side, you have a whole bunch of people that are fearful, thinking that these people are carrying the virus and they don't want to let them in. So this is only just a snippet of the footage, but really big riots. And I think the interesting thing is when you start to see police versus police. That's a pretty big news headline right there. So again, no, I'm not going to go through the entire clip here, but you can find it yourself. It's sort of pandemonium over there. Things are not well in China with what they're telling us. Now, I don't have an article for this, but just so you know, China has been saying that there's 0 cases, or maybe only a couple cases, and they're attributing all the handful of cases to foreigners that are traveling into the country, and that's why they've locked down travel for incoming foreigners. Well, actually, some of the whistleblowers in China are saying that they're no longer testing. The doctors and the hospitals have been ordered to not test. So, of course, we know that China has falsified the numbers. In fact, I don't have the article pulled up right now, but some statisticians looked at the data from China, the day-by-day data, and they said that their data had a 99% accuracy with regards to models. And they said in real-world scenarios, 70% is an excellent model. 99% shows that it's been blatantly falsified. And so, again, this whole truther versus truther movement, some people think that the numbers are falsified in terms of there is no virus or it's significantly overplayed. And you have a whole nother truther camp saying that the numbers are underplayed. Which one is it? Well, I'm going to just give you a brief thought on that just in a second. But I want to continue with, again, the psychology of what's happening in Wuhan and the tensions that are happening in Wuhan and how I see that sort of playing in the United States. So again, you can see province by province, there's a lot of territorialism going on, and that is happening here in the States as well. So check this out. Tennessee offering 3 times as many tests. Kentucky governor warns residents against traveling to Tennessee. So for whatever reason, the Kentucky governor, he's on good terms with the Ohio governor, but for whatever reason that's described down here in the article, he's at odds with Tennessee, and so he's warning to not travel down there. Again, he's also issued new executive orders restricting travel to other states. How that's exactly accomplished, I don't know, because we don't necessarily have a single border roads into different states. We could probably stop some of the highway travel, but that's about it. In fact, some of the articles that I'm going to show you is roadblocks have put up between certain states. Another one, armed vigilantes on Maine Island cut down a tree and use it as a roadblock to quarantine 3 men from New Jersey. Interesting article is these men have a cabin or some type of vacation spot, and some vigilantes saw that they were out-of-state plates and took the law into their own hands. So again, this is not just governors or politicians or police. This is actually citizens taking matters into their own hands. There's actually another article that I don't have pulled up here, but there's a whole lot of residents in the surrounding states to New York that were spray painting on billboards telling New Yorkers to go home. It actually said, "Go home, rats," that we don't want your virus in our town. So again, same thing that's happening here in China between the two provinces. Even more, you more than likely have seen this one, Rhode Island police to hunt down New Yorkers seeking refuge. Pretty crazy story here where the police are actually looking for New York plates, and I don't think they're arresting people, but it said that they're somehow forcing them into a 14-day quarantine. Again, I'm not exactly sure how that's executed, but mostly I just wanted to bring your attention to the fact of that this is even a thing. I mean, who knew that this could actually be a thing? But it really ties into, again, this whole psychology of territorialism between states. Even more, not just state by state, but neighbor versus neighbor. This is like modern day Gestapo. This one I think is in, this is in some type of city of Bellevue, Washington. You have local efforts where police are developing tools to report people who are not staying at home. In fact, one of these articles here, here it is. Over in New Zealand, Kiwis file 4,200 reports to police of people flouting the lockdown. So there was some YouTuber who said, "Oh, martial law is not going to come to the United States. There's just not enough military to possibly enact something like that." If you have a populace that is a tattletale populace, well, then you sort of can actually, you sort of target your efforts towards the people that are rebelling. But honestly, I think the rebellion that's coming to the United States, just because of how divided we are, is going to be incredibly large scale. And I do think the division that we're seeing in the news is really playing into that. And I'll get to that just in a little bit here. But yeah, the past couple 5 articles that I've shown you is really just about just the state by state division. I'm really not sure how this is going to play out further, but I'm really wondering if, they do enact some type of quarantine on New York like they did in Wuhan. What does that look like? Because people are already trying to flee some of these hotspot areas, and states are getting worried, and I just sort of foresee it sort of breaking down into riots like we see in Wuhan. If you actually go back in time a little bit, if you go back in February and you look at some of the ground level citizen videos out of China, it's just really interesting because the same things that happened there are playing out in the United States. Same exact things, which is why I want to touch a little bit about on the truther versus truther thing. Again, it's a very interesting dynamic, right? Because the media is giving us these numbers, and you have one truther camp saying, "Oh, the numbers are way underplayed." Peak Prosperity, I like that channel. There's a lot of them saying, "Oh, these numbers are definitely a log or 2 higher, or 40 times higher." And then you start getting into these more truther community-oriented articles talking about the number of cremation urns that are there that far outweigh the 3,000 count that the Chinese government has published. You see the whole cremation stories. You have whistleblowers coming out and talking. You see some of the rare footage that has come out from this VPN. So that's one handful of truther community. But then you get a whole other handful of truther community that is again somewhat divided in the approach, but saying that this is all a farce. Or it's significantly overplayed, which we are seeing some truth to that. I think there's a guy named Jason at Crowdsource the Truth. I used to watch him back in the day, but hadn't really touched up on his videos as of lately. But he's been doing some rounds around New York and showing that some of the hospitals really don't have that many patients at all, and they're sort of being targeted or funneled into particular ones, and the media is obviously congregating right there. So does that mean it's overplayed or not? It's causing confusion because people don't know. People don't know. It's the reaction doesn't really match the numbers. But again, are the numbers right? Who knows? If I look back at the ground level videos that are coming out of China, coming out of Spain, coming out of Italy, things like that. Again, not MSM stuff. These are cell phone videos that really haven't made a whole lot of rounds. I spoke to you about Coriana Jones and that channel. He posts a whole bunch of them. There's some really bad footage. I'm a very analytical person. I like to dig into things. I like to get analytical research on things. But unfortunately, in this day and age, it's really hard to get good, concrete analytical information. And I have to pull back, and I'm actually sort of changing my approach where I'm getting more of like anecdotal information. Anecdotal is sort of becoming somewhat of a truth here, because if I look at anecdotal information from people's cell phones, I see real emotions. I see things that aren't popularized by MSM. I see videos of hospitals overwhelmed with patients. I see doctors and nurses breaking down crying. In China, we saw doctors in PPE, and they're actually asked if they're wearing diapers because they're working such long shifts, and you can't be changing in and out of this protective equipment. They were literally wearing diapers, adult diapers all day. And just the faces of these people in China, something really bad was happening there. Also in some spots of Italy and Spain, there's some videos where you just cannot deny that something really bad is going on there. But again, you see it here in New York and some other places, and the numbers really aren't matching up. And there's some journalists that are going to some of the surrounding hospitals, and they're really not as crowded as you might think they were in terms of like what the media is publishing. And it's just confusing because the models are always changing. The predictions are always changing, and I think this is to drive confusion. I think that's really what it is. My personal opinion is that there is a real virus. The Bible promises it, right? If you're a believer of the end times, it says that there will be pestilences that wipe out a large score of the earth. Pestilences and famines and war. I mean, these things are promised. Scripture promises them. And we know that we're not coming back out of this, right? This virus has really set us on a trajectory that I would be very surprised. No guarantees. I would be very surprised if this is like a 9/11, where they take a whole lot of our liberties away, and then we sort of go back to some resemblance of life. There's just too many things at play. And again, I've still got a whole bunch of other articles to share with you, but there's just too much at play for us to think that this just goes back to some semblance of normalcy. So again, I do think that there's a real virus, but I do see it also being politicized. Absolutely. People are capitalizing on this situation. So these are all real things. What we have to be careful of, right, is like some people shared that New York, or rather the United States mainstream media, was using footage out of Italy to show that was New York. They were taking footage out of Italy and saying, look at the New York hospitals. And so naturally we're going to say, oh, that's, the whole thing's a farce. The whole thing's fake. Or you can look at it at the standpoint as MSM, even though it's a bad situation, they just want to boil it up as far as they can. But again, I cannot deny just the tons of, I've seen just tons of ground level cell phone citizen videos of just anguish and whistleblowers talking about how bad this virus is. And I just cannot discount that. Even though it's anecdotal, I just cannot discount that at all. Another thing is people are always saying that, hey, look at the flu numbers and how this compares. It pales in comparison to the flu. One of the interesting things, and I don't have an article pulled up for you, but you can sort of read about this, is the way that flu numbers are counted is not really scientific at all. It's not like you get a flu test and it's positive and you die, and so that gets counted as a flu death. It's a guesstimate, really, that if you have some certain risk areas and you die, it's presumed that you have flu. So I think those numbers are far inflated from what they really are in terms of actual flu deaths. And so again, if China downplays the numbers, or if any country starts downplaying these numbers, and even the flu numbers aren't even truth, they're sort of inflated. Again, analytically, it's very difficult to figure out what's truth. But I see hospitals overwhelmed. I have friends that are doctors and nurses talking about how they're overwhelmed, and there's a huge score of patients that are coming into their hospitals. And so I can't discount that. And so in reality, instead of still trying to dig in and what is the truth, really it's time will tell. Time will tell. If we're 3 weeks into this and we're still not seeing the same type of thing we've seen in China, well then, that they're just politicizing the whole thing, and it's really not as bad as they say it is. Or we'll see how bad it is. But again, can't deny the anecdotal evidence that I'm seeing from a whole bunch of countries and cell phone video. Can't deny that Scripture is truth, and it also talks about the fact that there will be pestilences that wipe out much of the world. And again, instead of trying to drive into this further and further and further, time will really tell. And really, what difference? I mean, there's a lot of things you could say to this, but if you're a believer in the end times, things have already been prescribed. Things are already going to happen. We're not going to have a great revival and reverse the trajectory. God has already prescribed this. So if you believe that, whether you believe there is no virus or there is a virus and it's significantly underplayed, or whether you do believe in a virus, we're all headed into the same spot, really. We're all headed into the same place. It doesn't really matter if you're going to use your First Amendment rights and protest or share videos or anything like that. It's already been prescribed. We're all going into the same place. So in my mind, the only difference between the 2 or 3 or 4 camps of truthers in terms of, what they believe about this virus, whether it's faux or fact, is I'm going to choose to wear a mask when I go out. You're free not to. But we're still headed into the same place. You know what I mean? Your protests, your sharing of videos, your things like that, it's not going to change policy, really. Again, if you're a believer that we are in the end times and things are prescribed and we're headed into this. If you don't think we're in the end times, well, then by all means, you may have a point where, okay, well, let's change the tide. Let's get people educated. Let's show them what the truth is, and, contact politicians, and hopefully we won't have our liberties taken away. I'm in the camp that this thing is steamrolling forward. It's the beast system. We're going to be persecuted. It's expected. So again, time will tell. Not really. It doesn't really make sense for us to go at each other in terms of what our opinion is on this situation when we're all headed in the same place together, and time will tell. Really, just wait. And we don't have to wait too long. We wait a couple of weeks and we see how this all pans out. All right, moving on. Covered about the division between states. I do want to talk a little bit about this. Again, reading the tea leaves. It's really interesting to go through the history of what happened in China and some of the other countries that went before us, and what happened to them and what will likely happen here in the United States or wherever you're listening from. It's really the frog in boiling water, or the frog in the pot thing, right? The measures or orders or whatever you want to call it, they get cascadingly more significant. So again, it was a couple businesses shut down here, a couple businesses shut down there, school shut down, and then we're going to do essential versus non-essential. But hey, by all means, get your prescriptions, get your groceries, go outside, enjoy our parks. Here in Ohio, we were told, last week, enjoy the parks, go out and get the parks. But of course, everyone floods into the parks, and it's like, well, you guys aren't being social distancing. So now we're going to have to do something, and this is that something. So state by state by state, you're now seeing very draconian measures saying, hey, well, we got to shut down the parks now. Sorry, guys. You had some bad eggs in there that weren't social distancing, so now you can't go out to the parks. And so it's that frog in a pot of boiling water. It's just increasing the temperature to where a lot of people don't really realize what's happening to them. And again, this happened in other countries, China specifically. Now, I don't know if what happened in China is definitively going to happen here in the United States, but particularly in Wuhan. I won't say this about other provinces, but particularly in Wuhan, when the first stages of this thing broke out, people were able to travel relatively freely. You had some people going into their cars and going to the airport and getting out. You had people going to the groceries with their luggages. They were getting groceries by themselves. And I do believe in Wuhan, they actually stopped a majority of the grocery stores even, and they were supposedly delivering food to people's houses. I don't know if that's true or not, but again, they even went so far as restricting groceries. And I know famine, again, Bible promises famine, and there's some articles I have on that as well. There's you have to pray for a lot of the people in these areas. India, China, a lot of these other countries, they're going through extreme famine. Some of these people that are living paycheck to paycheck or day by day even. All right, going into the military front. Again, the Bible promises us war in these times as well. And there's some people that have done some videos that are a lot more in depth than what I'm going to cover here. I still need to research those a little bit as well. But all the years leading up to this pandemic, we've seen world governments moving. It's like a game of chess, moving materials and military equipment all around the world. And we know that the prospects for global war are fairly good. And some of those things are, the U.S. was moving Patriot missile batteries all around Russia, and Russia was calling them out, saying, hey, you're blockading us. And you see a lot of these wartime drills and everything. So it seems like, in this crisis, something like that might come out. One of the things that I found peculiar is that this was about 6 days ago, 4 or 5, 6 days ago, and the U.S. military said, okay, as this virus spreads within the U.S., we're going to withhold the infection data or some of the infection data for national security reasons. We don't want our enemies to know exactly how this virus is spreading in our ranks. It could show signs of weakness. Interestingly, this is the same exact thing that happened in 1918. Same exact thing. All the countries, every single country that was at war was lying about the numbers. And it was only neutral Spain that was not in the war that actually posted true numbers. And that's how it became known as the Spanish flu, even though it originated here in the United States. But March 31st, again, that article was on the 25th or 26th of March. March 31st, all of a sudden, even though the military is saying how they are not going to share any infections in their ranks, the captain of a nuclear aircraft with more than 100 sailors infected with the virus pleaded Monday with U.S. Navy officials for resources to allow for isolation of his entire crew and avoid deaths. And this news, San Francisco Chronicle and many others got a hold of this. So it's weird. Of course, information can leak out. Maybe this was leaked out, even though the Pentagon's trying to prevent it from happening. But it's just sort of weird that the Theodore Roosevelt, which is a very critical and key tactical aircraft carrier for our military, that they would publish this information to the world, saying that we're taking it out of commission. Meanwhile, just less than a week ago, we were saying that we're not going to be doing this anymore. It sort of is purposefully signaling a weakness. I don't know if it's designed to tempt our enemy or what. I need to look into this some more. There's some videos some people have sent me that are covering this exact same thing that I'm showing to you guys, and so I just need to see what's going on here before I make any firm judgments on the matter. And then you've got this too, the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, which is a bunker for the U.S. military. Many of you have seen this. I think it was published on Drudge. The Pentagon is sending teams into the mountain bunkers. Now, this thing is always staffed. It's not like it's been taken out of commission and now they're suddenly flooding into here. But it looks like there's teams that may not have necessarily normally been in this complex that are now being sent into there. And so the reason is for pandemic preparations, but really being that the numbers really aren't that grand. And again, just staying in your own home or things like that are preventing spread. It sort of doesn't make sense that they'd be rushing into these bunkers. Again, it could be sort of a harbinger for the prospects of war. Again, I don't know when or if that happens, but not being fear-mongering, the Bible promises us these things. There will be wars, and there'll be rumors of wars. All right, switching over to technology stuff. So some of the 5G folks will like this, if I still have any 5G folks that still listen to me, because I know a lot of people are upset about my position on the whole 5G matter. But Trump signs laws to boost 5G security and broadband availability. Tons of countries are starting to sign into laws the fast tracking of 5G. Now, again, when 5G theory started coming out that there is no virus, this is only 5G, I said that would peter out. That when you start seeing this virus go into areas where there is no 5G and there's more infections, that theory would start to crumble upon itself. But I'm actually still sort of surprised that it's still a theory. Again, I'm not saying 5G is harmless. There's videos that show that it's detrimental to human health. It's detrimental to the environment. There's videos of trees that are next to 5G towers that are basically killing the trees. But it's not to say that our current cell phones are safe either. We know that some of the cell phone radiation and the network radiation does, in fact, cause health issues with your head. So it makes sense that, again, some of these more intense radio waves, or exactly what frequency of waves they're using, could be detrimental to health. I'm not denying that at all. However, to say that these people that are getting sick in areas where there's no 5G at all is somehow because of 5G, again, it doesn't really make sense. It also doesn't make sense that, again, if this is a 5G frequency that's being pushed across a major populace of people, that it's discriminately affecting only certain people. That part doesn't quite make sense to me. Again, if you're talking about physics, again, a virus can affect different people differently because of our biology. But to say, this physical radiation from these towers are just discriminately only affecting certain people, again, it's a hard thing for me to grasp. What I can grasp is that the beast system, and again, I've mentioned this in other videos, the beast system is going to rely heavily on technology, and it needs to be wireless. It needs to be something that can be available at all points in the world. And so I do believe that is the primary purpose of 5G. Probably harmful to the human health, more than likely harmful to human health and the environment, but it is really to support the beast system. I think that is the primary goal of it. Going on with technology, and just to highlight something that I had mentioned to you all maybe last week about making sure you have maps, using the Garmin Basecamp application on a laptop so that you can have maps offline. I thought this video was really interesting. Maybe a whole bunch of you have seen it, but it shows how they've taken a small segment. Let me see if I can get the video pulled up here. They take a small segment.
We wanted to see the truth
of Florida.
Social gatherings like
turn this off here and I'll describe it to you. All these little orangish lights here are basically individual cell phone data points. Every single cell phone's data point over a period of time. And so what they're showing in this video is that this is spring break. They're going to look at all the cell phone data points that were in this particular area during this time frame, and then they can loop all these cell phone points, which he's doing here, and then he's going to extrapolate time in the future from this point, and they can see exactly where all those individual cell phone identities traveled within a given point of time. So he's going to back out the map here and show you just in that small little section of Fort Lauderdale over a course of a couple days where all those people have traveled. And you can see that they've traveled all across the United States. And so we're definitely being tracked. Now they say, oh, don't worry, the personal information has been scrubbed from these data points. But yeah, maybe for this company it has been scrubbed, but you have to know that, companies and governments have those data points. And so cell phone can be a very dangerous thing. That's why, again, if the internet goes down for whatever reason, or you need to travel, don't take your cell phone. You should be using like a Garmin Basecamp thing for that. But it's a pretty incredible thing here. Speaking about internet shutdowns, because again, I don't want to be a fearmonger. I'm just reading the cards as I see them. It's sort of a very peculiar thing to even entertain the idea that the internet would be shut down. There was a lot of things saying the internet is strained. Netflix has reduced the resolution to take some of the burden off the net. Again, I don't know if that's the reason why the net would be shut down, but here, this was on March 31st, 2020. And there are countries literally shutting down the internet and have shut down the internet in the past for various reasons. So just take a look at this. Intentionally shutting down or restricting access to the internet violates rights and can be deadly during a health crisis. Human Rights Watch said today, governments that are currently imposing, I'm going to read that again, governments that are currently imposing an internet shutdown are Bangladesh, Ethiopia, India, and Myanmar. And they should lift them immediately so that people can basically get information about what's going on. That's really interesting. It talks about in the past, and I did not know this, India has had the most internet shutdowns with at least 385 internet shutdowns since 2012. So they've imposed many communications blackouts, which stopped families from communicating and disrupted the local economy. And then phone services were gradually restored after some intervention. Now, you'd have to do your own research in terms of why they did this, but it shows that it's a legitimate thing that happened in the past multiple times and that is happening presently. and could happen in a variety of other countries in order to, well, I don't know, in order to do what? For one, you could say for these internet shutdowns in India, which again, India, I'm really curious about what's going to happen there. There's some amazing footage, which I wish I would have pulled up for you, just showing massive amounts of people leaving the cities because they don't have work, and in droves because they live on a day-to-day wage, and they're going back to their local communities, and they need to find work, and they need to find shelter, and they're all traveling by foot. It's incredible. You need to look at the footage. It's absolutely incredible. I think I might even, in another window here, pull this up so you can see exactly what is happening in India. But it is not allowing Indian citizens to get information about what's happening in their country. It's not allowing Indian citizens to understand what's going on around the world. And it's not allowing us information to see what's happening within India. And again, India, a lot of people who are looking at this pandemic as a real pandemic were really worried about what would happen to India because of how highly dense its population is and the type of living conditions that many of them are in. That could honestly be very, very catastrophic. And these images that I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to go to Coriana Jones' YouTube channel, just so you can see this. It's absolutely phenomenal here. Just check this out. I'm just going to blow this up for you guys. These are all the people traveling out of India, again, because the cities have been shut down. That's where their primary work is. And they're all trying to get home and try to find food and try to find some semblance of life. There's actually some interviews with people just saying that they're really worried about feeding their children. And it's staggering. You almost don't even know what to do. You almost don't even know what to pray for because there's so much going on, and this is tragic. And there's also some articles where it's not to this degree, but within the states there's famine occurring as well because of all the laid off and furloughed workers. It's really a tragic situation. Again, that's really the focus, is the establishment of the beast system, as well as the totalitarian government, the restriction of freedoms, the 5G and AI, and the mark of the beast, and famines, and all these things together are going to put the pestilence on the back burner. But again, these videos are just take a look at this. Right, if the pandemic is really bad and they're just covering up the numbers, this is just not good. And some of these people, if you listen to the audio here, some of these people are walking like 120 miles. They are setting out on a 100-mile plus journey to get back to their hometowns because, again, lots of the major transportation has been shut down. The buses are already strapped. It is not a good situation in India. Incredible footage. So be grateful if we're in a much better place currently. Just be grateful to God for what you have right now and pray for all those who have not. All right, moving on here. Well, let's see, what time am I? Oh, I'm still doing good on time, about 39 minutes here. So we'll probably do an hour show. I've talked to you about how there's the snare of knowledge, right? There's people coming all out of the woodworks in terms of capitalizing on this pandemic and just the crises that are happening everywhere. And I've talked to you about some of those characters, but there's more. So Mormons, Mormons, they are really big into preparedness. And so now this is a great opportunity for them. Hey, we've been warning to prepare. And so because people identify with them now, that, oh, look, they have been telling us to prepare, and look, they were right. And then they look to them for spiritual knowledge, well, then they're going to be deceived and lead to spiritual death. Same thing with Hebrew rooters, those who are in the Torah observance community. They are very big on prepping. They're a very conservative type of bunch in terms of their thoughts. And legalism and things like that, but they're very preparedness mindset. And so again, they're doing all these preparedness videos, and so people are like, oh yes, yes, and then leading them to spiritual death with Torah observance. That's actually how I found myself surrounded by many of them, until God led me to break away from all that. Is I was into preparedness. I'm not afraid of the word obedience. Lots of these things that attract those in the Hebrew roots community. They're tired of some of the messages of the common day church, and then they're saying good things about obedience and preparedness and all these things. It's like, oh, that's where I want to go. Well, naturally, they all sort of like fellowshipped with me, and then I started finding things out that were wrong. But again, you can get sucked into these things if you're not focused on God's word. If you get sucked into some ancillary thing, some sidetrack thing, they'll suck you into false doctrine. But there's more than just that. So some of these people who don't know this individual, this is Rodney Howard Brown. He has a mega church in Florida. He was arrested for continuing to hold churches despite the stay-at-home order issued by the governor in Florida. And so some people look at this and they'll say, this is persecution of Christians, which it may be. This may be a sign of persecution of Christians, because we're not seeing this happen in other religions. But the danger here is if they go to support this individual, little will they know that he is a heretic. He's a false prophet. He's a false teacher. There's tons of videos on YouTube that you can look up for yourself of him engaging in holy laughter, engaging in that kundalini spirit of laughing and rolling around on the ground. He's heavily into word of faith. He's heavily into prosperity. He's actually in the evangelical circles with Trump and has actually laid hands on him. I wouldn't be surprised if somehow Trump got intervened or intertwined with this whole story and came to the defense of this pastor. But again, in one sense, it is showing us signs of the times where Christians are being persecuted. But on another fact, if we like rah cheer for this pastor saying that this is persecution of Christians, we need to fight for him and fight for that church, he's a heretic. He's legitimately a heretic, and so it's a messed up it's a messed up situation. And again, people look at this and they just want to support him and they want to support his church, but if they don't know what he teaches, they get sucked into something bad. Here's another example. Dolly Parton. I haven't really followed Dolly Parton's life in terms of her belief in God and everything about her, but I just wanted to highlight a particular thing that is a little bit of hypocrisy. So she talks about some good things here. She says, Dolly Parton believes coronavirus pandemic is a lesson from God. She says that she's not making light of the situation, but he's trying to hold us up to the light so we can see ourselves and see each other through the eyes of love, and I hope we learn that lesson. So it's not necessarily, she's talking about good things. Don't be scared. It's going to be all right. We need to learn to see through this through the eyes of love. Again, I agree. We need to have grace. But there's really nothing about repentance here. But that's not the main point of this. The main point is I want to talk about the hypocrisy, right? So Dolly Parton is a sweet lady. She's a sort of an American icon. This was on March 30th that she says a lesson from God. So naturally people are going to say, yes, Dolly Parton, bringing us back to God. But it was only earlier this month that she wants to pose for Playboy for her 75th birthday, because she did so earlier in her younger career. So you see the hypocrisy, major hypocrisy. Turn to God, pose for Playboy. This is what's really messed up. Not that we're all perfect, but this is significant disconnect. Again, I'm not going to judge her in terms of saved or not saved, but Jesus told us to beware the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. I wouldn't necessarily care to say that she's a Pharisee, but she is engaged in a high degree of hypocrisy here. And what I worry specifically about this is that the time that we're in. The there's sheeps and there's goats. Yeah. And in the end times, there's a left and a right. There's no in between. And I personally, some people don't believe that there's an actual Antichrist in the end times. They believe it's the Antichrist spirit, not a particular man. I think the Bible gives us pretty good information that there is going to be a man of sin, that there is going to be a singular man. And the reason why I say that is types and shadows. We see things repeated in the Bible from the Old Testament to the New Testament. Many who have followed this channel for a while have gone through some of the examples with me as it applies to Christ or as it applies to some of the other teaching aspects of the Bible. For example, Jesus, right? We see a type and shadow of Jesus with Abraham and Isaac, right? The father and the son going up to be sacrificed. Isaac is a type or a foreshadowing of Jesus Christ in the future. There's also types of the Antichrist. There's Nimrod as a man, a singular man, building up Babylon, ruling the world. Again, it's a type of or a foreshadowing of Antichrist. You actually have the Prince of Tyre. Very interesting thing. I think it's in Ezekiel when God is talking about the Prince of Tyre. I think that's pronouncing that right. But the very peculiar thing that God does when he speaks to this man, this prince, a man, he starts using very peculiar language, saying that you were a cherubim. You were covered with every precious stone. He's actually referring to Satan. And so we know that things that are happening here in the physical are paralleled with things happening in the spiritual. But again, we have this type or shadow of a singular man, a prince, but yet the Lord is using language describing him as Lucifer himself, that he's operating in the spirit of Antichrist, but again, a singular man. And so I do hold the position that there will be a man of sin, there will be a singular Antichrist. And the worry that I see with, again, that there'll be sheep and that there'll be goats, is if people have this big type of disconnect here, and you uphold a person as a godly person, and you don't rebuke appropriately. Again, no one's perfect. This deserves rebuke, or some people deserve reproval. Is she going to repent? And if she doesn't, what does this do for when the Antichrist comes about? Is she going to support him and lead her followers to him or not? That's just what's on my mind. Again, the particular time that we're in, I think, is just very dangerous. Again, for major transgressions, and you're just trying to test to see whether people are in the faith. More news. Just talking about the truther versus truther and the division of things, and again, how I think this is by design. This is part of the Antichrist spirit. But this whole aspect of masks. So again, reading the tea leaves, seeing China, seeing Japan, South Korea, Italy, Spain, tons of people were wearing masks. There were even CDC articles or other research articles before this all happened that were talking about how if someone or a member of your family in your house has the flu, wearing a mask results in 80% less likelihood of contracting the flu. So it's common sense. All the hospital care workers are wearing masks. All the people in all these other countries that were hit before us were wearing masks. There's articles before regarding the flu where masks are very efficient. But yet they were telling us, again, it was a lie. Oh, masks don't help. It's really just for the healthcare workers that are exposed to everyone. Just wash your hands. It's going to be fine. Come on, at least tell us the truth. You don't have a supply of masks. Therefore, you just want the healthcare workers to have them. You don't want people to stock or hoard them up. That's the really the situation. But now, all of a sudden, for some reason, they're saying experts now say masks can help slow the spread of COVID-19, despite previous claims. It's purposeful confusion to me, and I think it causes panic. It causes fear because people are saying, "Oh, well, I had a chance to get one, now I don't," and they're telling me this and that. They're creating chaos, right? Ordo ab chaos. if you follow occult studies. Order out of chaos, a phoenix rising out of the ashes. People think the existing government order that we live in is really the New World Order. And that, again, this whole Q phenomenon is that, this is Trump and Q, and this is the Great Awakening. This is the Great Revival. He's going to destroy the elites. He's going to do all this stuff and bring us back to a utopian. No, this isn't the New World Order. This order is going to be destroyed. It's going to be just like the phoenix that's burnt down to the ground. And whatever comes up out of the ashes is what's going to be that beast system that's prophesied in the Bible. This isn't the New World Order. It's what's coming next. Another one. So here, and I've mentioned this in a prior video as well, breaking Israel news. You have to understand here, right? So, just look at some of these articles, right? Very, very sensational articles. Report, Israel's top rabbi orders ceremonial white robe to greet the Messiah. The Jews are saying their Messiah is near. The Muslims are saying their Mahdi, which is their Messiah, is near. Again, very prophetic things about just the fact that they're awaiting their Messiah. But what I really wanted to point out, in addition to the Rodney article about him being a heretic, as well as the hypocrisy with Dolly Parton, and this, is you have to understand, Breaking Israel News is not a Christian website. I see a lot of people sharing articles on Breaking Israel News, and it's fine, but you have to provide context. There's tons of Christians out there that do not know that they're not Christian. They refer to Christians in passing, and they talk about prophecy, which makes a lot of people think they're Christian, but they're not. And it has a high probability of leading people astray in terms of doctrine. Again, they specifically deny Christ. I don't have all the videos pulled up, but I've talked about them before. They specifically deny Christ himself. So we really shouldn't be getting prophecy from them. Again, Jesus spoke about this where there were people that did not, they knew how to discern the weather, but they didn't really understand prophecy and the signs of the times. Yet we're going to be looking to these same people, which still deny Christ and have neither the Father nor the Son, and we're going to be looking to them for prophecy. It's just a disconnect, and it's dangerous. Again, not that I'm anti-Jew. I've talked about Romans in detail, where we are not supposed to boast against the Jewish nation. There are people in there that are remnant that will be saved by God. But Paul says, as regards to their sake, that they are the elect in terms of God's elect. But for your sake, they are the enemy to the gospel. And so we preach the word of God to them. If they don't want to hear it, then just dust off your feet and move on. But we don't boast against Israel. We don't boast against the Jews. Or we don't engage in any type of replacement theology and condemn them as a nation. We try to speak the gospel. If they don't hear it, God's going to deal with the nation as he sees fit in order to bring them to repentance. So I just want to slip that in there. Okay, a couple more articles here because we're getting up on an hour here. I talked about a lot about the famines in India as well as other people, but it's hitting here in the States as well. So this is Pennsylvania. This is a line for the community food bank in Duquesne. So pretty staggering. And again, I don't have the statistics in terms of how many people have applied for unemployment. I think it's 3+ million. But this is pretty drastic. And so, yeah, however you are led, if you have people in your community that are struggling with food, or if you have any conviction to donate to any particular organizations, I would say donate locally instead of these big heavy hitters that just end up losing the money or spending it frivolously. We do need to think about the people that are currently being or that are currently suffering from this, a lot more so than a lot of us who are just working from home and are still receiving a wage. So again, Bible promises famines, pestilence, famines, war, among many other things, like earthquakes. This is hot off the press just an hour ago. 6.5 earthquake strikes in Idaho. And you know the verses, that there will be earthquakes in diverse places, and we've had that for several years now. But again, it's really ramping up. There was another one, right, that I covered last week, where it was near Utah, and actually the Church of Mormon, the false angel Moroni, I think that's how you pronounce the name, actually lost its trumpet because the earthquake shook it off. That is quite symbolic if you know what the symbol of a trumpet is in the Bible. Other random news, I just wanted to throw these in here. They don't necessarily have relevance to some of the other things, but just as Trump announced, this law to boost 5G security broadband very, very quickly, we've also got these articles about how, hey, look at that. At the same exact time, March 30th, 2020, U.S. Space Force Fence Orbital Tracking System is officially operational. This is just all happening really quickly. It's really, really quickly. And hey, I might note that they stole my arrow. If you look at my channel, they totally stole my arrow. Every time I look at this, I have a laugh because it I know people say it's based off of Star Trek, but they totally stole my arrow. And yeah, that wasn't nice of them. Anywho, two other things here, and then I think we'll wrap it up. Just symbolism, occult symbolism. This is just eerie. I mean, this is totally Antichrist spirit. Global lockdown tightens as virus death mount. And here you have the Great Pyramids in red. I'm sure some of you could go down the rabbit hole in terms of the color red and what it means in terms of symbolism. But Great Pyramids colored red, telling people to stay home. And likewise in New York, you probably have all seen...
Draw the line with the Roundup Sure Shot Lawn. Roundup brand. Trust.
But you guys have probably seen we don't want to see Roundup, but the New York Empire State Building, again, turned red. The top of it was all turned red, and then they had this light that looked like a siren going round and round. But lots of monuments, I'd actually have to look this up and see. Lots of monuments turning red. I'm just going to look that up real quick, see if I can find more. I'm very curious to see if some of the other big occult tourist attractions are all sort of turning red. But here we have the Great Pyramids. The New York Empire State Building is turned red. I'm very curious to see if Paris has Eiffel Tower and other things turning red as well. Anyways, just really, really creepy stuff. But all this, I mean, this stuff is so fast, which really gets into the question of prophecy. People talk about the seals and how fast they're broken. Have they been broken over tens of years, or they get broken quickly? I don't know, but I can just tell you, and you guys know for yourself, that it's going fast. And I really wonder, week by week, where we go out of all of this. And I don't know, but I'm gonna keep you guys updated and also keep you grounded in the Word of God to make sure that we don't become slaves to fear. And I've also told you, make sure you start your day with Scripture. I'm still doing that, trying to get away from the news, because again, I kept on looking at my phone every single morning, looking at the news. Now I'm starting, looking at a book of the Bible pretty much every morning, and it's keeping me grounded. I mean, there really is, at least for me, there really is a peace just reading through the Word, and again, staying grounded with it. And make sure that you are, as I said in my last video, you're using the power of your testimony to start spreading the gospel. And also that you pray to God in terms of helping you to understand what your gifts are, what talents, if you remember that parable, what talents he's bestowed onto you, what graces he's appointed to you, and you operate fully in what he's given for you. You don't have to be in everything. But but you should really understand your gift and make use of it in this time. Some people are leaders, some people are servants, some people are givers, some people are intercessors in terms of prayer warriors, some people are teachers. So there's tons and tons of different roles in the church. And a lot of people I've heard get worried that they're not doing enough. And again, it's not based on your works, but that really comes from the enemy, saying that you're not doing enough. But the Bible also says that he has appointed for us particular things to do. He's like, you don't have to, you can't earn your salvation. You can't do all of this, but I'm giving you this, and I need you to do this. And so it's a key part of the walk in faith. Walking in spirit is what has he appointed me to do? How can I listen better to understand what my gifts are and to operate fully in that? Again, I saw some comments where people didn't know what their gifts were and they were a little bit panicky about that. Just be peaceful, be in prayer, ask God what your gifts are. And everything matters, right? Everything matters. So some people, again, they're called to pray. And you may look at other Christians saying like, I want to have a big YouTube channel and reach thousands, or I want to do this or that. It's not to diminish any role or part of the body. Everything is important. And so if you're a prayer warrior, if you're an intercessor, do it and do it well. If you're a teacher, do it and do it well. If you're a servant, do it and do it well. If you're a giver, do it and do it well. Just do everything that you're appointed to do, in the glory of the Lord and to help establish the kingdom. And if you're not there yet, again, just pray and seek the Lord's guidance on it. And in the interim, everyone should have a testimony. I said that before. Everyone should have a testimony. In Revelation, it says that the enemy is defeated by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. And so I did share, some people sent me their testimonies over email, and I did publish those on my On Point Preparedness Facebook page, just to get those out some more. Some people are, getting encouraged, saying, hey, maybe this is the time now that I put something on Facebook and share my testimony. Get that out there. Doesn't have to be on YouTube. Share it with your friends and family. Share it on social media network. It's easy to record something. Another thing I saw from one of my friends that was really interesting is just a Facebook post saying, if anyone has any questions about the Bible or hesitancies or anything like that, please reach out to me. I'm available. And you don't always have to have the answers, but again, you've got a testimony. It's individual to you, you alone. No one can take that from you. Even if they say something against you, you can say, hey, this is what happened to me, and I'm the one who lived through it. You really don't have a say in that. And so it's yours. It is yours, and you own it. And again, the enemy is defeated by the word of our testimony and the blood of the Lamb. So that is a good starting place. It's just by the word of your testimony. And so, yeah, I encourage everyone. And you know what? You will be filled in the Spirit. Again, I mentioned this in another video, particularly the one where I was talking about a prayer for the fearful. There's a type and shadow with Adam and Eve, where they were in the shame of their nakedness, which was their sin, and they covered themselves with fig leaves. They covered themselves. They covered their own nakedness with something that didn't really do a good job of doing that. Rather, as you go through the Bible all the way to Revelation, God is going to clothe you in white linen. He is the one that's going to clothe you, not you clothing yourself. And so, as it applies to this whole thing about fear, trying to coach yourself out of the fear, it's an all right thing, but it's really like putting fig leaves over yourself. Coaching yourself to do that or whatever, it's not really sustainable. It's still good, but it's not really sustainable. But you will, I promise you will find solitude and peace in the Lord as you reach out and disciple others. I promise you, if you start to operate in your gift, or you share your testimony, and you actually start to help disciple others and lift them up and edify them and exhort them, it will lift you up. You'll see it, but you just need to do that. You need to actually, try to help operate in your gift and exhort and edify, and hopefully you don't have to reprove or rebuke anyone, but again, mostly edifying others. It will have a like effect on you, and it will help put things in perspective for you. So I just really encourage you all to do that. So, we are right a little bit over an hour here. I didn't really have a chance to check the comments, so apologies for that, just because I've had so much news articles to go through. But I will see you all in the next video. I don't know exactly what I have planned. Again, I really do still want to balance out ministry as well as keeping you abreast on the news and sharing my opinions on things. Not that it entirely matters, but we'll see you here in a day or two, and see what is next. Tomorrow's April Fool's. Hopefully they don't play anything on us. So I'll see you guys later. You have a good night. This is Mike with On Point Preparedness. See ya.